Mozart is very appropriate for this moment because Max, some news broke this week.
Here it is.
Your ongoing feud with the founder of the Mozart Mercenary Group in Ukraine, which has just announced that it's shutting down. And I think you were played a
here it is
in that decision.
Okay, so the Mozart Group is one of the most prolific, certainly well-publicized U.S. mercenary groups operating in Ukraine. And Colonel Andy Milburn, former Marine, has trained forces in Somalia, Israel, I think across the Middle East and in Ukraine. He sort of found his mojo. Supposedly was a true believer in the Ukrainian cause, but some months later, he was forced to announce at probably the most lucrative period for mercenary activity in human history. Today was the last day for the Mozart Group. The Mozart Group ended today. The name and entity had become the subject of litigation and a distraction from our core mission, which was training Ukrainian soldiers and rescuing civilians, but the mission and people continue. So now let's talk about the distractions. We have a piece up at the Grayzone that lays this out by Alex Rubinstein, and the distraction was Andy Milburn and his drunken behavior. So Alex's piece is called The Crazy American because that's what Ukrainian officers, that's how they referred to Andy Milburn because of his drunken rampages across Kiev, which were publicized through litigation by the co-founder of the Mozart Group. They were basically ashamed of him. They filed legal action to get him to quit. And so here's an excerpt from the lawsuit against Andy Milburn, which contributed to bringing down the Mozart Group. On multiple occasions, and I'm paraphrasing, Milburn was intoxicated and out after the curfew imposed by the Ukrainian government. And he appeared in a recorded video significantly intoxicated and making unfounded accusations and derogatory comments against the government of Ukraine and the Ukrainian military, the very people Mozart Group LLC is in the country to assist. That would be the video that I publicized that would have never seen the light of day if I hadn't done so. And I think, we showed it last week, but it's pretty entertaining. So we'll show it again. And this was the final blow for Andy Milburn. As soon as I can pull it up, he's basically being interviewed by this show called Team House, who are military groupies. It's kind of a show for veterans. And he's getting sauced.
It's a corrupt, fucked up society. So I'm not a big fan of Ukraine. Oh, what is that?
Oh, this is Buffalo Trace.
Okay. And the Ukrainians are in violation of the Hague Convention. There is I forget the exact phraseology, but it is, we looked at this closely, and it's they should be no filming of the phrase, the terminology is bringing attention, blah 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 blah, to media, and yes, the Ukrainians are violating that,
And he goes on and on. He says they're led by sick individuals. They're a corrupt society. They commit war crimes on camera. He's pleaded with them to stop, but he doesn't really seem to be that forceful with them. And, he's making money doing all of this. So why would he actually step in? But you can see he's slurring his words. He's intoxicated. As Alex wrote, his drunken mind spoke for his sober heart. And he is now featured again in the New York Times, a publication that in October portrayed Andy Milburn as this heroic humanitarian figure rushing to the front lines to save Ukrainian civilians, who had a Ukrainian flag emblazoned on his bag because he so believed in the cause. And now you have a de facto obituary for his career. And I loved how Jeffrey Gettleman, the New York Times reporter, refused to credit me.
Yeah, he used the passive voice. It circulated on social media. But hilariously, Andy Milburn, after accusing you of posting a deep fake, had to admit that, yes, his comments were real, and he apologized for them. He said, "What did he say?" He said, "I shouldn't have said that."
Yeah, well, first, I mean, here's his. This is on his personal account. We went through the tweets on his account, his Mozart Group account, which were even more bonkers in Ukrainian. But here he says, Max Blumenthal, a journalist well known to be a conduit for Russian propaganda. Google him because, you know, Google is all legit. Released a deep fake interview in which I appeared to be confiding in him drunkenly about my feelings about war in Ukraine. So was he so drunk that he didn't even remember who he was talking to? Because I've never had a conversation with Andy Milburn. So he's saying that that I published a deep fake, like I used AI technology to completely manipulate his appearance to make him say things he didn't actually say to me in an interview I never conducted. And then in the New York Times in recent days, Milburn confessed that he shouldn't have said those things. So it wasn't really a deep fake. Aaron, as you said, it was a deep trace, deep Buffalo Trace, deep Lafroig. Would you drink with Andy Milburn? I wouldn't. There's like good drunks and bad drunks.
Yeah. I don't know. It's tempting. I mean, it'd be pretty enjoyable. I'd love to hear more what he has to say when he gets drunk. You know,
That's true.
I'm sure there's more skeletons in his closet that, you know, a little alcohol might help get out.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, you would hear some detailed stories about atrocities. I mean, who knows what, but yeah, I think what we saw in that video where he knows he's on camera was just the tip of the iceberg of corruption and criminality by the Ukrainian forces he trained. And yeah, the New York Times said that another problem with the Mozart Group was the mercenaries he was bringing to Ukraine. These are Americans, grizzled combat vets, in the words of the New York Times, who admitted to struggling with PTSD and heavy drinking. When they weren't working, they gravitated to Kiev's strip clubs, bars, and online dating. So they basically were sex tourists, exploiting a population that has already been ruthlessly exploited by the rest of Europe and which has been impoverished through war. So really, like, great humanitarians here, and good riddance. You know, you before he announced the closure of the Mozart Group, he relentlessly smeared me, and so this is the Grayzone curse. You're done. You're done. I would play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which was inspired by Mozart right now if I could on a tiny violin, but I just don't have one.